But okay, hey, I'm really happy to see all of you guys here. It's a lot of people. And I'm really happy to be here and to get a chance to talk a little bit more about my experience in the field. My family is quite tired of hearing about it. I told my dad I was going live. He's like, I read your blog. It's enough. I don't need to hear more. So I'm happy to be here and share a little bit about my experience as a field worker for MSF. So I spent half a year in Bentiu, POC, and that stands for Protection of Civilian Sites. And the Protection of Civilian Site hosts IDPs, which Maria explained is internally displaced people. So these are all South Sudanese people who, for different reasons, related to the war mostly, has been had to move into this big camp. So who am I? My name is Johanna Lönn. I'm a nurse. I have my master's degree in emergency nursing. And when I left for the field, I had been a nurse for 3 years. So I actually started my thinking of joining MSF already during my studies. I remember I walked by to one of these tents at a festival in Uppsala, and I said, "Hi, I'm going to be a nurse. What should I learn for you to want me?" And they said, "Okay, well, they were happy." And then they said, "Yeah, well, you should either focus on children, working with children, or infection diseases." And I think sick children are really scary. So I was like, okay, I'll go for infectious diseases. So I started working at an infection disease ward, and I started working with emergency medicine. And then I moved on to the emergency room, which is where I work when I'm home in Sweden. So after this really long process, I applied. I was sitting in Norway with my friend, and she said, "Shouldn't you just apply now? You've been talking about MSF for 7 years now." I said, okay. So she supported me. It's a really long application, 3 or 4 pages, I think it is. And I sat through it, and I filled in everything about myself and my life, and I sent it off. And then I got an email from Maria saying, "Hey, you sound like a good person. Come by for an interview." And I was super nervous. I was sitting for hours and discussing and talking, and I really felt that she knew me better than a lot of my friends does. After this interview, she kept talking and asking, and I had to explain why I would want to do this. And that went okay. So I was called to the assessment center. So I had to come here, and I did a lot of group activities, and we had written assignments. It was a whole day. And then I was sitting on a train, and I got the call, and she said, "Hey, the assessment center went well. We would love for you to come and work in the field with us." And I was so excited. Finally, this was my dream coming true. So I was like, "Yeah, okay, so I'll leave pretty soon then." She's like, "No." So first, I went to, it was 8 weeks of medical training. It was half-time. So that was really interesting, this medical preparation course, because I had never really worked with international medications before, medical training. So during 8 weeks, I learned about women and children's health, infectious diseases in countries far, far away. I learned about working in the field. And this course was really good for me because it actually helped me to prepare a lot for my departure. During my nursing training, I heard the words such as cholera and malaria, but I never really learned more about it. And 6 months later, that's all I did for all my working days. So what did I do before my departure? Once this long process was done, I was excited. I was about to go. I was about to get ready to start being matched to my mission. I was feeling really proud. I had worked a lot, and I prepared a lot for this, so I was finally on my way. I spent a lot of time calming my mother down. She was very nervous about me going away. We talked a lot about this. And when I got the call, and I had always prepared for I was like, okay, I'll go anywhere for 12 months. I'll accept the first mission they offer me, and I'll go for a year if they want me to. That was my mental state. And then I got the question if I wanted to go to South Sudan, to Bentiu. So I did a little Google, and the first thing that shows up is the whole town has been burned down 2 years ago. Oh, okay. So I told my mom, "Don't Google where I'm going." That was my first, like, just don't. Just be happy that I'm going to South Sudan. You don't need to know more. But of course she Googles. We had a lot of debriefings. Was I nervous? Well, of course I was a little bit nervous. I was going across the world to a very unstable country that's been in wars for several years. But as Maria was explaining as well before, I felt really safe going with MSF because I know that for not decades, but decenniums at least, they've been working in stable environments. And they have very good routines for ensuring that us field workers are safe when we are abroad. So yeah, I was a little nervous, but I was never afraid of going because I knew that MSF would not send me somewhere that they would not be able to take me back from. So I did all the preparation courses. I went to my PPD. I was in Germany for a week, and that was so much fun. It was 40 people that were all like me. They wanted to go abroad, and they wanted to do humanitarian work. And finally, we could be as nerdy about our interests like we really can't be with your other friends. It can be a little bit lonely to want to go abroad and do this kind of thing. A lot of people view it as weird. Why would you leave your comfortable home at home, and why would you go somewhere, do hard work, and eat rice and beans for 6 months and live in a tent? So it was quite nice actually to have a community, to starting to feel this aid worker community that you actually pretty quickly get into. So I was very happy about this. I started Googling the weather in South Sudan. I was like, 50 Celsius, that's gonna be very hot. But I was finally getting ready to go. And that was really nice. And I was on my way to my dream. But as Maria said, you need to be prepared for flexibility, because once I was matched, I had 4 weeks to departure, and I started packing, and I made a Facebook event. I'm going away, come to a party. And then it went, oh, it's gonna be another 2 months. I'm like, oh, I'm so close, I'm so close. So I spent 2 months in a weird limbo in Stockholm, and the weather was getting colder, and my bag was already packed, and I was ready to go. But finally, November came. First day of snow, I was on my way. So, arriving to the mission. I arrived in Kenya, where I stayed for 1 night for transition. And the first thing I see is zebras running over the road when we drive on the taxi away from the airport. And I was like, oh, I'm not in Sweden anymore. And I say, wow, they run free here, to the taxi driver. I said, they run wild. He's like, no, they're just out cruising. Okay, we see things differently, and that was sort of my first start on the way that I see things will not always be the way other people see things. So I arrive in our layover place where we go for these long weekends, or in our rest and recreation. And I remember when I leave the plane, it's just a hot wall of heat coming off, and it's 43 degrees of Celsius, and I'm thinking, okay, this is where I'm going to be for the next 6 months now. When I was flying in over camp, this is how it looked. So this is a 5 times 5 square kilometers big camp. So it's huge, and it's 120,000 people living there. And the MSF hospital is the only secondary health facility in there, which means that we are the only ones who can have inpatients there. There are a lot of primary health care, some hälsovårdscentraler, but we are the only hospital that was located in here. So I was going there as a nurse activity manager. And I'll get back a little later to what that meant. But these are a few snapshots from my first time there. So this is my tent where I was living. I could barely stand up. I hit my head in the wall. And this is one of the first nights we sat up on a container where we went to look at the sunset every evening. So this is a couple of people from my mission. We have a British GP, an Indian surgeon, a German pediatrician, an English other fellow nurse, and then me. So this is where we spent every evening with our with the team, just trying to relax a little and debrief after our days. So what was I doing there? Being a nurse activity manager, I was originally matched for TB, tuberculosis, and an IPD ward, which means the medical ward. But when I got there, they were like, oh, by the way, you're also supervising operational theater, sterilization, and the surgical ward. Welcome. I was like, okay. They were joking about the flexibility thing. So I was like, okay, sure thing. So I got a lot of policies and sterilization guidelines. I'm really good at operating sterilization apparatus now. Who knew? But this is the medical team, and we met every morning outside of the pharmacy for a little morning meeting where we just talked a little bit about how the night was. One of us nurses or clinical officers, which was our South Sudanese colleagues, had the night on call every night. So about once a week we were on call at night as well. And then you were the first on call for the whole hospital. So you got calls about everything that might happen in the wards. And then we met every morning and you give a little debriefing and then you went to sleep for a few hours until the tents got too hot. But this is the medical team, and as you see, we're a lot of people here. We were a really, really big project. We were over 30 international field workers there. So I think that makes us one of the biggest MSF projects, actually. But what did I do every day then? Well, the first few weeks when I was in the field, getting to know the team. You work together, you live together, and you sleep in the same tiny compound. So it's a lot of new people to get to know. And I was very lucky. I had a really nice team. We had a very good time together. But of course, there are a lot of strains. We come from all parts of the world, and we're used to doing things in a lot of different ways. But it was a challenge on a lot of times, but it was also really rewarding to get to view things in a new way that you might not have seen things that way before. I also had learned how to be bored. Might sound a little contradictory. I was in a war-torn country and working a lot. But those few hours that I didn't work, we didn't really have a lot to do, to be honest. Because of the high insecurity, we had a curfew. So we couldn't leave our compound after 6:30 in the evenings. So because of the heat and the dust, the TV broke, the projector broke. So we played a lot of Uno. You guys know that game? Yeah, it's not that fun. And after half a year, yeah, it's not a lot of fun. So I will never again say that I don't have anything to do when I'm back home, because that will just simply not be true. I've been bored. But thankfully we had a lot of work to do, and we kept busy. We usually started at 8 in the morning, we finished at 5, 6 in the evening, and then once or twice a week, depending on the availability of international workers, we did on calls as well. For the technical logistician in this project, he was always on call. The Watson, yeah, we called them as well when something happened. So it was a very... We were always really depending on each other. We couldn't have done it with all of our logistician coordinators and friends there. When I was on call, I was watching a movie with one of my friends there, the technical logistician. And I got a call saying, oh, the lights are off here in the ward. And I was like, okay, then I have to go. And he's like, oh, I'll probably go as well. And then we have to call another one. So usually one problem involved a lot of people. So we worked together a lot. So it's actually quite nice and refreshing as well to get another pair of insight into what to do as well. When you're only medical people, you get pretty nerdy about what you do. So it was quite nice to have other people as well with other professions to share your everyday with. I learned newer language. The tribe that we primarily worked with there, they were newer who lived in this camp. So to be able to communicate with the patients, and as well because it's out of courtesy to learn the language of the people that you work with. I studied a lot of newer. And that made the little kids that were always following me really confused when I could answer their questions in their own language. They're like, whoa, what is this? But it was nice, it was fun. We played Uno in newer as well to learn how to count from 1 to 10. You gotta spice it up a little when that's all you have to do. And of course, reading up on all the guidelines and policies. If you go as a nurse or doctor, really in any profession, you're expected to be a manager. And I had done a little bit of management before, but here I had 40 people that I was supposed to be the manager for. And I was making sure that we did a lot of trainings as well. I did CPR training, drip rate calculations, fluid balance calculations, really anything that I saw a need for, or if one of the MDs or the surgeons said, we should practice a little more with this as well. Because a lot of times this country has been in war for a lot of years, so the availability of trained healthcare staff is pretty low. So a big part of my work there was to do trainings, which I think is a lot of fun. I was doing CPR trainings and busting staying alive high in our tukul, in our training tukul. And it was really rewarding actually to see that the trainings that I gave, and they wanted trainings. All my staff wanted so much training. So we had a lot of fun, and they came to me and said, this, Johanna, we need to learn more about this. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll prepare a training for him. So once a week at least, I did trainings as well. So that was a lot of fun. But then also I needed to learn the guidelines and policies if I was one who was supposed to be in charge of implementing them and making sure they were being followed. So I read a lot of papers and guidelines, which is really interesting because MSF has a lot of good guidance for you when you work in the field as well. You don't need to feel that you need to be able to go there and memorize everything. We have a lot of good books for it, but you need to be sure enough in your professional role to implement it. Because even as a nurse, when you go here, you have a lot more independent work than you might have at home. And for me, that suited me well. But I was also happy that I had worked a little bit more than the minimum standards to go, actually, because that made me feel a lot more secure in my role when I was there. So when the first few weeks passed, I started to feel a little bit more secure in my role. But then, of course, you get a little bit of a backlash. You're far away from home. The internet connection that we had it was okay on occasion. We could send messages, but you couldn't really call home in a good way. So what do we do? When the going gets tough. We had a TB clinic that I was also supervising, and this outpatient TB clinic, so the patients came to us to get their treatments and their medications. So it was a lot of kids there, and the TB treatment is really harsh, and it's not fun, a lot of side effects. So a lot of people who've been here before in the project, they sent balloons back. I do it too, I send packages of balloons. So we used to hand out balloons to the kids in the project. So here I am, I'm doing balloon animals. I realized that I knew how to make a balloon dog. I didn't know I knew that, but in the field I was like, oh, a dog, and the kids loved it. So when I needed a little bit of just a little break from the work, I used to go to the clinic and I sat in a corner and made dogs for a little while. And that was a good distraction, actually. We took evening walks between 5 and 6. That was our walking time. So after work, we called each other on the radio. We said, time to walk. You want to walk? You want to walk? And we collected a bunch of people who wanted to take a little walk. So we had a little compound, and then we had a U-shaped strip of sandy roads around. This is where we could walk. Some people ran it. I didn't do it, it was too hot. But we could take some walks. We were always followed by little kids who were walking after us and running and calling and asking our names and getting scared when we answered and knew her. But we made friends with them as well because they followed us every day. And we also, we always had tea stands outside our hospital. So sometimes when the local staff that I worked with, when they could always see when I was in a particularly stressed mode or in a particularly, I was feeling a little down or something. So they would always say, "Come, Johanna, come, let's have chai." And we would get some chai and we would have just have a cup of tea and talk a little bit about life and have a sit outside of the ward. And that was really nice. I was really moved by how I was accepted by the local staff. They get new supervisors every 6 months, and still they were really accepting and talked, and we formed really nice bonds as well. So that was very rewarding to do. And it was also a very cheap pleasure. This cost me 2 Swedish crowns, about 20 cents. So it's a very affordable habit to get into. So what else do you do to make life in the field bearable? You celebrate when you can. So up here we have our Christmas party. So on the 27th we had a Christmas party for all of our staff at the hospital. So we bought a whole cow. It was literally a cow with the skin and the head and everything. Our poor tech logs had to go and get it. He came back, it's like, oh, so much cow. And our amazing kitchen lady somehow turned this into stew for over 400 people. So that was very nice. So we did dancing, we had drums. And it was just very nice to have a little bit of celebration, to just thank all of our local staff as well who keep working year after year, and just to have a little time for bonding as well. That was very nice. They taught me the newer dance. Kitchen ladies took me behind the counter, like the big containers that we had, and they said, "We're going to teach you to dance." I'm like, okay. So they put this traditional dancing equipment around my back, and they teach me to dance, and then they invited me into the circle. So it was a lot of good fun, and it was also very important to just do the little extra things. Down here, this is the TV staff. So this is our hospital manager, Alice, and this is Angelica, who was our medical doctor at the TB ward, and this is me and some of our TB staff here as well, our TB counselors. And this is World TB Day, which was very big in the camp. So we went there and we talked and we just made sure to appreciate our staff who work with TB every day. So we celebrate when you can. I was in the field during Christmas. And on the night before Christmas, I had one of my strongest memories, actually, from my whole mission happening. I was in our sister project in the town away. It was they were a pretty small project, so sometimes we went there for on-calls to give them a little break and to give them a night off when they didn't have to be on call. So the night before Christmas, I went there to do on-calls. And it started as a pretty quiet night, and then around 9:30, we hear the door ring on our port, and when we open, we see this little kid being carried in. He's around 4, so he's been run over, so his foot is severely damaged, and they put some cloth around it. So we take him into our little examination room, and as soon as I open it up, I'm like, okay, so this kid needs operations. He needs to go to the surgeon, which is in the town, just 30 minutes away. But this was after dark, and for security reasons, we were not allowed movements until we had lights again. So I called the MD there, and we make up a plan for this little kid during the night. So I'm up all night. I put my alarm every 2 hours, and I go there and we give more medications, we give antibiotics, we give fluids, we make sure that he's under the mosquito net. So I spend the whole night before Christmas with this little kid. And as soon as it's light again, I carry him to the car, and his mom carries all of their things, and we go to the surgery. And I spend the whole day just being really anxious about how will it go? How will this little kid, how will it turn out? And when I fetched the surgeon, I was like, how did it go? He's like, no, it was fine. We saved him. The infection didn't spread. They had to amputate the foot, but the little kid survived. And the day after, I see him jumping around with his little band of brothers. They are identical. They're just a little taller than each other. And they sit on a bench, and he looks like nothing ever happened to him. He's the happiest little kid. And that was one of the best Christmas presents I think I ever had. When you spend the whole night and you're just making sure you really want this to go well. And he was perfectly fine. A few weeks later, he was checked out from the hospital. And that's really one of my strongest memories from the field here. And the best Christmas present I think I'll ever have. But when you're far away from home during Christmas, you make the best of it. We got a little package of Christmas decorations sent from the headquarters, so we tried to make the best of our pretty boring kitchen container. I explained about the julbocken, the Christmas goat in Sweden, and they thought it was sounding too absurd to be true. That we make big Christmas goats in Sweden, and we put them everywhere, and we set fire to them, and they did not at all get the tradition. But they were quite intrigued about it as well, so I think we built South Sudan's first Christmas goat from bamboo and shading net we made to build it. So this is Goaty. He was very popular for holiday photographs that we took. So this is me and the tech log who built it together. And it was quite nice. Everyone in the project, they participated and joined in with a couple of things from their home countries. And in the Czech Republic, they do some things with apples. I didn't really get it, but it was quite good. Our Indian surgeon, she made something that was very similar to this rice dish that we do in Sweden as well, with spices and all. And from the UK, they made some glue wine as well. So everybody pitched in, and we tried to make it as nice as possible, because being away from your family, when you're in the field, you're going to miss things. You're going to miss birthdays, weddings, your friends having babies. You're going to miss Christmas with your family. So it's nice to just make a little bit of effort, actually, to make those events as special as possible when you're in the field as well. So we made a Christmas goat, and we did a little bit of decorations. But when I left in November last year, 6 months felt like a really long time. And I'm going to be clear, I was only away for 6 months because it was a very high security project, and we were very limited in our movements. So that was why my first mission was only 6 months. So that's quite unusual. But all of a sudden, I saw my name on the board at the HR administration saying, end of mission coming up, and I was in green. I was like, no, 6 months didn't pass already. But it did. So how can I summarize my 6 months then? Of course, all the people you met. When you meet people and you live with them for 6 months, you know about their breakfast habits, you know about their bad habits, you know about their good habits, you know what they laugh about. You get to know people in a very close way that you don't do otherwise. And if you're lucky, you make friends that you'll have for a lifetime. And I'm thinking about all the local staff that I work with, all the insights we've shared about our lives, and all the times we had tea together. All the laughter every time we had our cultural differences, and they would just be looking at me and say, why is it so important that the meeting starts at 2? I'm Scandinavian. In Sweden, meeting starts at 2 o'clock. So we compromised. I seriously started, they showed up at 2:40, 2:50, and I said, oh, okay, I'm gonna start at 2:15 at least. But that's when I'm gonna start my meetings. All the compromising about cultural habits that we had, all the laughters when we just looked at each other and realized we're just talking past each other so much. But it's okay, we want to understand each other, so we'll keep doing this in a very friendly way. All the misunderstandings we've had, all the times I said inappropriate things in newer for mispronouncing words. All the good times that we had, and all the personal development as well. When I left, I didn't know if I was prepared for going, but I was always feeling secure as well about MSF's thinking that I was good enough to do this. Whenever I felt that, can I really do this? I knew that, okay, so all of that selection process that I went through, all of the interviews and the assessments and the applications and the discussions and yada yada, I was like, yeah, they wouldn't have sent me if they didn't think that I could actually do the job. So that was quite a good comfort for me as well. So don't be too disencouraged by the long application process. For me, that worked as a sort of a security blanket when I was feeling anxious about, can I really do the job? And I was like, yeah, MSF thinks I can do it. And I think it's actually going pretty well as well. So that was a big comfort for me when I was away. I've learned a lot medically. I've worked with cholera, malaria, leprosy. I've learned what can you do when the heat takes out every type of medical analyzing machines that we had. How do you do it? How do you look if someone has anemia, if you can't check their hemoglobin levels? What do you do when the power is out and you still need people to be on using different types of machines? So I've learned a lot medically. My stethoscope was my best friend, and I carried it with me everywhere alongside with my radio and just the clinical look. And I was also proud that I made it. I was 6 harsh months. We lived in tents. It was never below 40 degrees Celsius. I've had my lifetime rations of rice and beans. I still haven't been able to eat beans since I came home. But I made it, and I was really proud of myself. And it really made me feel that I've developed as a professional nurse, and I developed as well as a person. But so being back home again, what was it? I was well prepared that the transitioning back home might be difficult. And well, of course it was a bit surrealistic in a lot of ways. I was lying in my sofa one evening when I was just home, and I realized, and not even a week ago, I woke up in my tent in South Sudan. And now I'm in my perfectly tempered apartment, and I have my fridge with everything that I want to eat in it. And I have internet, I can stream Netflix again, and I can just... It was a surrealistic feeling, transitioning back to and adjusting back to just going on the subway again and not having my radio always on me and no one really caring where I went or what I did, or not having to report to everyone what I was doing all the time. And the lack of responsibilities, it was a little overwhelming actually to come home. But pretty quickly I got back into it. I I met a lot with my friends. I had a lot of sushi. I missed sushi a lot. And I just tried to remember what I liked about my home life as well. And for a couple of months, I was very happy with it. But now it's starting to itch a little again to go on my other mission. So we'll see how long I'll stay home this time. Because it gets to you in a lot of ways. The feeling of doing something that is really meaningful, and the feeling that you're contributing every day and that you're helping to make lives better for a lot of people. That's why we're here. That's why we want to do this. And of course, it's something you want to keep doing. So I'll stay home a little while longer, let my mom breathe a little before I leave again. I think she needs a little reselling period as well. I'll try to enjoy life back home as much as possible. And then I'm going to see where life takes me next and where MSF takes me next. So, yeah, that's all I had to share. Thank you.